go for part two. Part two, y'all. Eugenics. Where we left off last time was right here with this quote from Scarlet and the Beast, and now we're going right into Samuel Butler, which really is a nobody. He's just a fictional writer. It's just to show you the mindset of the people during the time, okay? So, Samuel Butler anonymously publishes Erewhon, okay? Many authors were influenced by the novel, including George Bernard Shaw, George Orwell, Frank Herbert, Anne McCaffrey, among others, okay? Let's move right on. 1872, British Columbia's provincial government opens its first facility for mental ill patients, the Victoria Lunatic Asylum, right? There's a lot about British Columbia and Alberta that I could have put in here that I didn't. There's still going to be a lot in there, but a lot went down around Alberta, that's for sure, okay? 1873, BC. Not BC, but British Columbia in 1873. Persons deemed to be lunatics could be committed to an insane asylum upon certificates issued by doctors who examine the patient in each other's presence, okay? So we're giving the discretion to doctors, okay, to decide this, giving them discretion. 1876 is when they would start having what they called Indian Acts, so-called Indian Acts, all right? Where the Indian people would feel compelled to renounce their Indian status and join Canadian civilization as full members. In other words, one could say that the act was designed to make life as an Indian difficult. 1876, the Aurelia Asylum for Idiots. As eugenics theories gained ground in the 1900s with support from the important Canadian figures such as Dr. Helen McMurphy and Dr. C. Hinks, the institution became more about segregating the feeble-minded from the rest of society for the rest of their lives, okay? So when you hear about these old crazy-ass insane asylums, these were meant to house the people that the creators of eugenics wanted to get rid of, okay? It went hand in hand, all right? Again, in red is the reference. Lung is the one that wrote this. Okay, in red is always references, okay? Here we go. 1877, sociologist Richard Dugdale publishes The Jukes, all right? And Henry Goddard, The Kallikak Family, which we'll get to in a bit, all right? Were often cited in support of eugenic practice. The book was extremely influential in eugenic practices, particularly in the United States. The book was influential on scientists, doctors, judges, lawyers, politicians, and clergy. For example, the Jukes were instrumental in testimony in the Buck versus Bell case of 1927, the outcome of which allowed for forced sterilization legally throughout the United States. By the way, Margaret Sanger was a huge fan of that outcome, which is not a surprise when you see what that one was about when we get to her in a minute, all right? We will be getting to her. This is a presentation about eugenics, so yes, we will be getting to Planned Parenthood, all right? 1882 in the U.S., the Act to Regulate Immigration. The phrase becoming a public charge hints at this act's connection to eugenics, particularly in the United States. The rise of eugenic theory and practice coincided with the rise in immigration in the United States, particularly from Eastern Europe. As immigration rates rose, particular concern grew over the rising number of non-Western, non-Anglo-Saxon people entering the country. Moving on. 1883, back up there in Canada, all right? Many worked on the colony farm, including crops, working in the barns, learning to work dairy equipment, right? Here we go. Francis Galton then coins the term in May 16th, 1883, coins the term eugenics, later describing it as the study of the agencies under social control that may improve or repair the racial qualities of the future generations, either physically or mentally. You see, he's really the starter of the actual system of eugenics. You can see it there. The word eugenics was drawn from the Greek word eu, meaning well, and genos, meaning offspring. Together it means well born. Again, you can see going back to the Greek culture how they were thinking. All right, that's where the word genos comes from. And later, this eugenic agenda would go into genetics, genes, just the discovery of genes. All right, they've been trying to do that for years before they even had this so-called science. Okay, so here we go. Here's Friedrich Nietzsche, or however you say his name. I'm not the best at pronouncing things, okay? Friedrich Nietzsche. That's the way I'm going to say it. 1883. Thus spake Zarathustra, which of course is a Persian deity. Quote, I teach you the Superman. Man is something that should be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? All creatures heretofore have created something beyond themselves. And do you want to be the ebb of this great tide and return to animals rather than overcome man? See, that's promoting eugenics and horseshit evolution at the same time. Now, quote, behold, I bring you the Superman. The Superman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the Superman shall be the meaning of the earth. I beg of you, my brothers, remain true to the earth and believe not those who speak of you otherworldly hopes. Poisoners are they, whether they know it or not. Despisers of life are they, decaying ones and poisoned ones themselves, of whom the earth is weary. So away with them. All right? Now, would it surprise you to find out that this man was a Kabbalist? Which is where this Superman and the Golem concept comes from? Let's keep it going. Right on to Nietzsche. In 1895, the Quatuor Coronati Lodge of Masonic Research shared with Karl Kellner its discovery that pagans had controlled population through human sacrifice. When Kellner informed the German Grand Orient in the Grand Lodge hierarchy of this, Friedrich Nietzsche commented, the 20th century will be the bloodiest on earth. Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche, philosopher and critic, born in Röcken, Germany, strongly religious as a child, brilliant undergraduate, accepting chair of classical philology at Basel before graduating, dedicating his first book, The Birth of Tragedy, to his friend Richard Wagner, which is another Freemason, by the way, whose operas he regarded as the true successors to Greek tragedy. Much of his esoteric doctrine appealed to the Nazis, and he was a major influence on existentialism, I would say, if not the number one. In 1889, he had a mental breakdown from which he never recovered. Right? I guess this shit that he follows isn't that great after all, huh? So, Edith Starr Miller in Occult Theocracy lists Nietzsche as one of the many Masons who was involved in the 19th century revival of witchcraft, which led to the founding of the OTO. In fact, which is the Ordo Templis Orientalis or whatever the fuck. In fact, the name Nazi is a derivative of Nietzsche. That Hitler's last birthday gift to Mussolini in 1943 was the collected works of Nietzsche testifies to the enduring influence of this philosopher upon Adolf Hitler. Let's keep going. Edward Payson Jackson's Demigod book. First early fictional accounts exploring eugenics, as well as the possible positive impacts of eugenics. And of course, New York Times claimed that the novel's lead protagonist was a forcible hero. I wonder if the people that run the New York Times have anything to do with eugenics, or at least believe in that philosophy. 1888, Frederick Wines publishes his report on the defective. All right? Wines' report examined relationships between mental illness and variables such as race, gender, age, etc. 7 categories were described in the 1880 census: dementia, dipsomania, epilepsy, mania, melancholia, monomania, and paresis. And eventually the categories were adopted by the American Psychiatric Association. You see? This stuff never went away. They just renamed shit. Okay? 1888, we're up to now. Remember, we're going chronologically with this multi-part series, all right? Stirpiculture, a term synonymous with eugenics. This pamphlet was meant to support eugenics and expand on views Woodhull already made known to the public through her speeches. Recommended further educational measures, particularly towards motherhood and prenatal development on part of the government. Right? Again, you can see this Plato, Republic, the state type of shit continuously. All right? Many publications Woodhull worked on at the time also supported eugenic messages, including the rapid multiplication of the unfit and her work for the periodical The Humanitarian, in which Woodhull published several pieces between 1892 and 1901 on eugenics, and with the help of her daughter, Maud Zula Woodhull, supported eugenic measures such as change in marriage laws, sterilization of the unfit, state custody of the unfit, there's that state, and improved education and access to birth control for women. Because they care about women so much. Let's see about that. 1889, Francis Galton publishes his book Natural Inheritance. The book is considered the foundation stone of modern biometrics. You got a religious psychopath using pseudoscience and a bunch of hogwash, and it's the foundation stone of modern biometrics. I'm going in, man. I'm not playing with these people. All right? He used statistics to try and quantify the contribution of ancestors to their offspring. Galton used 15 years of research conducted at Galton's anthropometric laboratory to write Natural Inheritance. He examined features such as stature, eye color, artistic faculty, the fuck, and disease. This is some pseudoscience. I don't give a fuck. It was largely critiqued due to the use of overly simplistic statistical methodology, in spite of being his most technical work. His most technical shit is horse shit. And this is what this shit was founded on. A bunch of horse shit, y'all. I told y'all. All right? That's just my opinion. But damn. Surgery for the relief of idiotic conditions, in which he asked the audience, okay, this is, Dr. Isaac Carlin presidential address, right? Surgery for the relief of idiotic conditions, in which he asked the audience, whose state shall be the first to legalize oophorectomy and orchiotomia, however you say it, for the relief and cure of radical depravity. That's like tying your tubes and like vasectomy type shit, right? Let's keep it going. This just shows you what was going on. I'm just showing y'all the history of it. Think what you want. You might not end up with the same opinion as me. That's fine. But these are the facts, y'all. Let's go. Excuse me. 1893, August Weismann publishes The Germplasm. Theory states that the inheritance only takes place through germ cells, gametes, such as egg or sperm cells, and not through somatic cells, the cells forming organ, bones, or tissue, that carry out an organism's function. He offered support to Darwin's theories of evolution. It is considered one of the scientific origins of eugenic thought. Okay? So what you're looking at here is their scientific justification for this eugenics, right? That's very important. Okay? This theory was successful in convincing a majority of scientists and was therefore highly influential. Weismann's theory was also used by degeneracy theorists to support negative eugenics. Of course it was. You see, even when these people do something for the cause, even if they throw a disclaimer saying, please don't use this for bad means, I find that ridiculous. I find that ridiculous. I don't know what y'all think, but I find that ridiculous. Come on. Now, this sick son of a gun. This is in Kansas. This is a picture right out of Kansas, by the way. And by now, y'all should start to figure out how racist this bullshit is. All right. Here we go. F. Hoyt Pilcher, upon his appointment as the superintendent of the Kansas State Asylum for Idiotic and Imbecile Children, he implemented a program of castration despite the absence of a law supporting such measures. That piece of shit right there. I got a picture of him right there for you. Excuse my language, but damn, y'all. Castrating people illegally. Shows you what kind of man he is. How many of y'all are out there just castrating people as a hobby? Come on. Let's be real. This is a piece of shit right here. Let's be real. Pilcher believed that castration was necessary in order to prevent the patients from masturbating. All right. According to historian Mark Largent, between 1893 and 1898, he amputated the testicles of 44 males and performed hysterectomies of 14 females, whose average age at the time of the operation was 20 years. All right. Now, do you see this picture? You see this little girl looking at whoever's taking, looking like, man, I can't believe I'm part of this shit. Now, pay attention to this, you guys. Eugenics in America. Now, all y'all trying to tell me this horse shit about, oh, there's no such thing as eugenics or white supremacy and all this. Look at this. Look at these guinea pigs, y'all. Look at these. It says right there, color inheritance in guinea pigs. They're showing you how to breed the blackout, y'all. The fuck out of here. Don't tell me this stuff ain't racist, y'all. You see all this code for feeble-minded and this and that and the other. Come to find out, this is what it's about, y'all. Breeding out the dark. Let's keep it real. Again, this ain't CBS or NBC or CNN, y'all. We're not skipping over this shit today. Not today. This ain't your damn public school. This ain't your damn public school where they cover shit up. We're not covering shit up over here. Let's keep it moving. H.G. Wells, 1895, classic novel, is often understood as a reflection of his personal views on eugenics, which were revealed in other stories, including The Island of Dr. Moreau, The War of the Worlds, and The First Men in the Moon. All right? Wells' story serves as a type of literary cautionary tale urging the reader to look to the condition of mankind and act before it's too late. It's also a source of significant scholarship, particularly on utopian and dystopian futures in science fiction. Now, H.G. Wells was a major Freemason. He was 33 degree, I believe. And he was considered the so-called oracle of his time, like the big historian and therefore prophetic man of his time, which, by the way, when Metropolis came out, he reigned hell with a review on it because he was jealous that he wasn't given the task of doing it. And 9 years later, he came up with his own horseshit version, which never really, called Things May Come, which didn't go that far. It didn't have the same occult significance that Metropolis had. That's another story. This is from his autobiography, H.G. Wells. All right? Straight out of it. I'm going to read it, all right? In those days, I had ideas about Aryans extraordinarily like Mr. Hitler's. The more I hear of him, the more I am convinced that his mind is almost the twin of my 13-year-old mind in 1879. The twin, y'all. But heard through a megaphone and implemented. I do not know from what books I caught my first glimpse of the great Aryan people going to and fro the middle plains of Europe, spreading east, west, north, south, varying their consonants according to Grimm's law as they did so, and driving the inferior breeds into the mountains. That's very interesting, actually. But they formed a picturesque background to the duller facts of ancient history. Their ultimate triumphs everywhere squared accounts with the Jews, against which people I had subconscious dissatisfaction because of their disproportionate share of the Holy Writ. I thought Abraham, Isaac, Moses, and David loathsome creatures and fit associates from our Father, But unlike Hitler, I had no feelings about the contemporary Jew. Quite a number of boarders in the Bromley Academy were Jewish, and I was not aware of it. My particular pal, Sidney Bokit, I think was unconsciously Jewish. What? And the point never arose. Unconsciously Jewish? What the fuck is he talking about? That's a quote straight from his shit, y'all. Call it what you want to call it. Moving on. In DC, they passed the Hospitals for the Insane Act. According to this act, mentally ill persons can be involuntarily committed to a hospital under an urgency order, which requires 2 medical certificates. Again, using those doctors to have that discretion. 1897, here's another one of these doctors. Lobbied the provincial government for institutionalization of all feeble-minded individuals in the province. Common practice in Canada, especially as the eugenics movement gained momentum. Here goes Michigan trying to pass their law for a mandatory castration of defined types of criminals, degenerates, but it failed to pass, but it set a precedent for later laws, all right? By the end of the 19th century, the excuse of overpopulation had been manufactured for the making of birth control acceptable. The problem was solved through oral and anal intercourse, homosexuality, special postures, gestures merely suggestive of coitus, and a host of other techniques resorted to in order to achieve satisfaction but avoid conception. Most odious, however, was infanticide or child sacrifice, sometimes performed as a religious rite to a demon god who wanted blood. I'm just giving the background of the concepts that brought us to where we're at today, all right? This Dr. Harry Clay Sharp, Indiana, he advocated vasectomies as a way to prevent the transmission of degenerate traits. Indiana's 1907 eugenics law was the first eugenic sterilization legislation in the United States. There's a picture of the first eugenic sterilizer in America right there. Which was what? Not even 1900 yet. Okay, now we're just getting to 1900, all right? Hugo de Vries and Karl Correns independently recreate Gregor Mendel's work on heredity. The work leads to a rediscovery of Mendel's writings. So now we got a renaissance of Mendelian eugenics, basically. Both sets of work become instrumental in establishing theories of genetic linkage in evolutionary biology. All right? Biometrica, 1901. The mathematization of biology. The founders of Biometrica include notable figures such as Sir Francis Galton, W.F.R. Weldon, and Carl Pearson. All right? Galton, an American eugenicist, Charles Davenport served as consulting editor and editor respectively. All right? Included criminology, botany, zoology, epidemiology, and other aspects of human health. Okay? It represented the forefront internationally of research and statistical methods and their application in science and technology. Sir Francis Galton served as the first editor of the issue. All right? Now I'm showing you that the people who are creating these sciences are eugenicists. So it's kind of hard to trust all of their science. All right? You can if you want to. To me, when you got religious psychopaths who are operating the way they're operating, can you really trust the results that they come up with, which they wanted the whole time? Okay? 1901, insanity is deemed to be caused by hereditary passing, intemperance, syphilis, and masturbation in psychiatric literature. I'm telling you, this shit's been pseudoscience for a long time, y'all. Okay? So here we go. We got this German periodical, Archiv für Rassen, okay? Edited and founded by the father of racial hygiene, Alfred Plotz, who was also responsible for coining the term racial hygiene. Okay? First journal created focused primarily on eugenics, either in Germany or abroad. It was considered especially credible due to its association with Plotz. Plotz declared that Archive had the goal of discovering the principles of the optimal conditions for maintenance and development of the race. What race do you think they're talking about? You'll see later they're talking about the Nordic branch, okay? Because that's what would end up clashing with the whole Caucasian thing, aka World War II. Moving on. The journal was used to help promote ideas of the Society for Racial Hygiene, which was founded a year later in 1905 by Alfred Plotz, Ernst Rudin, Anastasius Nordenholtz, and Richard Thurnwald. Okay? This is significant right here. All right? Because this isn't matching what they teach you in school. All right? Now, Lenz praised Adolf Hitler in Archive for taking racial hygiene seriously as a politician. Under Lehman's editorialship in 1918, Archiv für Rassen closely allied itself to the political right of Germany, solidifying an alliance between politics and the racial hygiene movement. This is ridiculous. Do you realize how ridiculous this is? Not in a literal sense, but in the fact that they haven't told us about this in school. Why are Jewish gentlemen solidifying an alliance with the political right of Germany, aka the Nazis, with eugenics? Do you remember them telling you that in school? I don't. Moving on. The journal was influential in German and Soviet eugenics and was also used by the American Eugenics Record Office. Right? Contributors to the archive included Alfred Plotz, Ernst Rudin, all right, Franz Boas, which is a Freemason name. Okay? Articles focused on topics such as evolution, genetics, degenerative phenomena, the cost of protecting the weak, population increase, neo-Malthusianism, and anthropology. Provides much evidence and changes the scientific thought towards race. And by the way, that picture up there in the top middle, that's a real picture of him. Here we go, y'all. We're moving on. We'll come back to that. Because remember, it's only 1904, y'all. The plans for the station had been this is the Carnegie Institution. The plans for the station had been suggested by eugenicist Charles Davenport in 1903. It originally opened for the purposes of studying heredity and evolution. Through experiments with plants and animals, the station became a main research center for American eugenics. Davenport served as director of the station, as well as Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. That's a significant laboratory, you guys. Remember that name, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. And in 1910, the Eugenics Record Office, which would eventually become part of the Department of Genetics. Whoa. See, the average person is going to read right over that. Listen to that. The Eugenics Office becomes the Genetics Office. You see that? Eugenics became genetics. It's the same shit. They laid the foundation for the genetic science. Okay? Eugenics didn't go anywhere, y'all. They just changed the name on the fucking building. My God. My goodness. Renamed the Carnegie Building. So, what was called the Station for Experimental Evolution was renamed the Carnegie Building, because that just sounds like professional and cool. It doesn't sound crazy. Because you can see that evolution had everything to do with this goddamn eugenics movement. All right? And it's currently home to Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, Library, and Archives. All right? Damn, y'all. And you see the star of Saturn right there, too. I'm not going to get into that right now. March 21, 1905. The legislature of Pennsylvania passes their Act for Prevention of Idiocy. The aim of the bill was compulsory sterilization for persons considered to be mentally and physically unfit. The targeted groups are left at the discretion of the attending examiners. There goes them doctors again. The suggestion is that a variety of conditions might be hereditary, so legislation shouldn't be too specific. Just leave it vague and let these doctors decide. Get the fuck out of here. Okay? Can be sterilized if their condition is thought to be hereditary. This is sick, you guys. If you can't understand that, god damn, what's wrong with you? Come on. I know that's just my opinion, but damn, come on, you guys. Here goes the Commonwealth statue on top. And this just shows you that this is a religious symbol. Artist Roland Hinton Perry is the man who sculpted the statue Commonwealth on top of the Capitol's dome. Commissioned by Joseph Houston in 1904 to execute a drawing that the architect had done of this allegorical figure. Installed on May 25th, 1905. See, allegory. Okay? It's not about worshiping a woman or worshiping gold. It's about the symbology of what she represents, okay? That's Semiramis sitting on top of that damn dome. The damn Queen of Heaven, so to speak. I'm not going to get into that right now, though. Let's stay on eugenics. The Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland passes their Aliens Act. With regard to the first part, the legislation outlined a number of conditions that aliens or immigrants would have to meet in order to be admitted to the country. The second part of the legislation, the power to deport or expel undesired aliens or immigrants, was given to the Secretary of State. Now we're giving executive power to the Secretary of State. Executive decision making. Okay? This crazy chick, Dr. Helen McMurphy, right? She was appointed as the inspector of the feeble-minded. She focused primarily on unwed mothers, resulting in the institutionalization of many individuals and the removal of their children. She argued that the only way to prevent the spread of feeble-mindedness was through segregation and the eventual sterilization of the unfit. Right? She was made... okay, this is... You guys are about to see the origins of the Democratic Party now and why they push eugenics so hard still. Because they were designed that way. Okay? Or they were founded with people that thought that way, I should say. She was made commander of the Order of the British Empire in 1934. Through support for eugenics largely evaporated after Nazi atrocities came to light following the Second World War, both provincial laws remained on the books until the early 1970s. Okay? In Alberta, more than 2,800 people were involuntarily sterilized. All right? So, McMurphy was hardly alone. Pay attention to this, you guys. This is significant, okay? McMurphy was hardly alone. Canada's famous five. The early feminist. Nellie McClung, Emily Murphy, Irene Parlby, Henrietta Muir Edwards, and Louise McKinney were also fervent eugenicists, as was J.S. Woodworth, the first leader of the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, CCF, forerunner to today's New Democratic Party. And to this day, they push eugenics. Moving on. Because we're still to 1906 now. Following a request from Charles Davenport, the American Breeders Association, ABA, formed a committee on eugenics, led by Luther Burbank. Committee on Eugenics attempted to examine and make accessible to a larger public ideas of selective breeding to create superior stock, recording and controlling heredity in human beings, and minimizing the threat of inferior humans. precursor to the Eugenics Records Office and the Americans Eugenics Society. So see, the from cattle to the humans, because they would be going and recruiting all these breeders of chickens, breeders of cows, breeders of freaking peas and vegetables, just all these people that are trying to understand how to breed stuff. Okay? Like these people, the Brahmin Association, the American Dog Breeders Association. The utmost practical importance of our committee can be work out the actual facts concerning the manner in which hereditary characters are transmitted from one generation to the next. It will have rendered a great service to the men who are attempting to produce improved strains of plants and animals. Right? This is a letter, I believe this was to Darwin. Leonard Darwin, though, not Charles Darwin. So, the Eugenics Education Society was founded in Great Britain by some of the leading intellectuals and social reformers of the time. H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley, Mary Stopes, who were concerned about overpopulation and its threat on society. Sir Francis Galton served as the society's first president. Eugenic teaching and understanding in the home, in the school, and elsewhere. There's them schools. Campaigned for and marriage restrictions in Britain. Organized the first international eugenics conference in 1912. Received much support from politicians in the medical profession. Okay. There's that eugenic certificate. This guarantees that I've examined the gender of this card, or the sender of this card, and find a perfect physical and mental balance. And so you needed a ticket. This is how they wanted it. So where you'd need a ticket. And in some cases, I could agree with that. But let's talk about it in an open way, not a disgustingly demonic way where you're behind the scenes exterminating people. Let's talk about it in the open if that's really a concern. All right? See, insanity. It's largely hereditary. There goes those advertisements, y'all. The Galton Laboratory for National Eugenics is established at the University of London, okay, in Britain, as it is University College London in Britain as a center for research into human genetics, okay, under the directorship of Carl Pearson. Okay, described the laboratory as the sole British establishment for eugenic research, the principal source of authoritative eugenic science, the scientific benchmark of all eugenic discussion in England. It has continued to the present day and is now a part. You hear that? It has continued to the present day and is now part of UCL's Department of Biology as the Galton Laboratory. It maintains publication, listen to this, it maintains publication of the Annals of Human Genetics, formerly the Annals of Eugenics, as well as the collection of relics related to Galton. He's like revered. He's like a fucking deity for this goddamn psychopathic movement. Relics related to Galton. That shows you how important. They're calling it the Galton Laboratory. It shows you that this man's prominence. And I also included an actual picture of the Annals of Eugenics and an actual picture of what it's called now, the Annals of Human Genetics. Literally showing you the proof that they just changed the fucking word. Jesus Christ, y'all. The Indiana legislature passes their first compulsory eugenic human sterilization law. The law made sterilization mandatory for criminals, idiots, rapists, and imbeciles in the state custody residing in state institutions. You see that state? That fucking it's that damn republic shit. Because we live in a republic that was founded on the ideas of Plato's republic. Okay. In 1921, the Indiana Supreme Court ruled that the sterilization law was unconstitutional. The court reasoned that the law denied due process of a law granted by the 14th Amendment. A historical eugenic precedent to this law, which the 14th Amendment should be what protects us from vaccines, by the way. Now, a historical eugenic precedent to this law was legislation approved on March 9th, 1905, prohibiting marriage licenses for imbeciles, epileptics, and those of unsound minds. The marriage law aimed to reduce the reproduction of people considered to be feeble-minded. Approximate people carried out in Indiana while legislation was active. Let's see. Let's see what that says, because I got this all covered up. Sorry, y'all. I gotta correct this. Approximately 2,500 sterilizations were carried out while sterilization was active. Dang, I'm approaching the Eugenics Congress. Okay, here goes this dude. Now, I could do a 10-hour lecture just on this dude. This is one of the most profound. No, that's a lame word. Profound. I use that word too much. Now, this is one of the most effective and prolific leaders of all time in human history right here. For better or for worse. This is one of the most significant figures in human history, in my opinion. This is Winston Churchill. He hails from he was initiated in the Studholme Lodge, number 1591. He got his third degree ceremony in Freemasonry in March 25th, 1902 in the Rosemary Lodge, number 2851. Okay? Again, we're not going to go in on this dude because really, this might be the most interesting man of all time. I could go on for days about this dude and the whole New World Order mission this man was on. So, the British Royal Commission on the Care and Control of the Feeble-Minded, set up by Sir Winston Churchill in 1904, issues its 8-volume Minutes of Evidence, Appendices, and Reports. It recommends compulsory institutionalization for the feeble-minded and sterilization of the unfit as a measure to improve the British population. See? In Britain, they were doing this shit too. Excuse me. Influence on Britain's Mental Deficiency Act in 1913, of which Churchill was an early drafter. Churchill was an ardent supporter of eugenics. The improvement of the British breed is my aim in life, he said. See? Why doesn't he get demonized the same way Hitler got demonized for saying the same shit? Okay? I understand all the numbers and all that, but in the Soviet Union, they killed like 20 million people, most of whom were Christians. Why don't we hear about that? Let's move on. The first scientific baby contest, initiated by Mary DeGarmo, was held at the Louisiana State Fair. You see all these babies? Do y'all see any dark-skinned babies? I don't. 1908. As the contest moved forward, it became increasingly laced with eugenic ideas, and those involved used the contest to spread those ideas in conjunction with exhibitions, fairs, and other forms of media to raise eugenic awareness. See? That breeding that master race. Let's keep it real, y'all. When you see them guinea pigs at this shit. Now look. I'm gonna zoom in. Fuck it. Look. American literacy, native born, which they're referring to so-called now Caucasians, right? Foreign born, entire population, Negroes, illiterate to literate. You see? People used to talk about race, so-called. They used to do it. Now what they're doing is they're doing it behind. I'd rather see this than what I'm seeing now, y'all, to be honest with you. Oregon's perfect baby girl is triumph for eugenics. Some people are born to be a burden on the rest. This is a what do you call it? A display at one of these conferences. All right. This light flashes every 16 seconds. Every 16 seconds, a person is born in the U.S. Okay, it's propaganda. Registering human pedigrees. How Kansas develops fitter families. A remarkable experiment in eugenics. Look at this amazing, perfect family in the middle of this picture. I don't understand what's so amazing about them. Just look like some regular ass people. I don't understand what the fucking deal is. Oh yeah, it's called racism. Almost forgot. An organizational meeting for what would become the League for the Protection of the Feeble-Minded was held at the Morris Street School for the Blind. Canada's first eugenical movement included physicians, clergy, academics, businessmen, and female activists concerned with the control of the feeble-minded, eventually becoming, aka changing the name, the Nova Scotia branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association. And there's a picture of it at the top there. They just changed the fucking name. The Eugenics Review was a scientific journal published by the Galton Institute between 1909 and 1968. It was originally published for the Eugenics Education Society, later the Eugenics Society, and eventually becoming the Galton Institute. The goal of the journal was to acquaint members with others in the society and to give expression to the eugenic movement, and to place eugenic, though where possible, on a strictly scientific basis. They're trying to refine it. Okay? I see right through this shit, y'all. Through revenue, I don't know about y'all, but I see right through this shit. Through revenue collected for the Eugenics Review, numerous organizations and individuals were supported by the society. This included the Annals of Eugenics, now the Annals of Human Genetics, remember, in providing accommodation to the Population Investigation Committee, the Family Planning Association, and the International Planned Parenthood Federation. Okay? Here we go. Included legislation, biology, birth control, book reviews, social issues, and exchanges between authors, among others. Contributors included Francis Galton, Julian Huxley, John Maynard Keyes, among others. The review eventually came to an end and was replaced by the Journal of Biosocial Science. See, they just changed the name. The importance of the society would have been more widely recognized had it been less evocative, had it had a less evocative name. Doubly evocative after the prostitution of the word eugenic by Nazi Germany. You see? Prostitution. That means he's not rocking it the way y'all designed it. In other words. Nazis didn't design it. They prostituted it. Uh-oh. They're starting to slit their own throat now. California passes and enacts the first of their sterilization laws while under the leadership of Governor James Gillett. This law remains in place largely unchallenged for the next 70 years, and between 1909 and 1964, 20,000 people are known to have been sterilized. This is just last year, April 18th in 2018, California is currently considering compensation legislation, aka reparations, for sterilization survivors. Did y'all know that? Californians? J.S. Woodworth, Stranger Within Our Gates. Listen to the titles, y'all. Like Descent of Man from what's his dumbass name? Charles Darwin. Stranger Within Our Gates. Clearly, that's a eugenics book. I can tell you before I even read it. It was published in 1909, provides a hierarchy of races and ethnicities based on their ability to assimilate into Canadian society. Focusing on Great Britain, the United States, Scandinavians, Germans, and later chapters focusing on the Italians, Levantine races, and Orientals, ending with a chapter called The Negro and the Indian. Which you know damn well, he probably didn't even want to barely talk about them because the plan was to exterminate them anyway. Let's keep it real, because we're going to get to that. Okay? I'm not into sugarcoating shit. If you have a problem with it, change it. Don't get mad at me. Problems of the population with which we must deal in the very near future. This concern resulted in many reformers calling for immigration restriction and racial purity through eugenic interference with the proliferation of immigrant families. Let's go. We're going in today. We're telling the truth today. Fuck it. Here goes Connecticut passing their horse shit. Required that a board of surgeons or physicians examine the mental condition. So you're giving power to these damn doctors again. It was unique in that it was the first legislation to specify the surgical procedures that must be used. Oh, whoop-de-whoop. 1910, the Binet-Simon intelligence test, the IQ test. And the new term moron endorsed by the American Association for the Study of the Feeble-Minded. Okay? Now, you see the IQ scale? Genius over 140, very superior, superior, average, dull, borderline. And then you got moron, imbecile, and idiot. You see? That's why I don't want to use those terms anymore. That's why I don't want to use those terms anymore. Because it has everything to do with eugenics, you guys. And they would use that in these legislations. Go read any of these pieces of legislation. They're always using this kind of shit. This talk about feeble-mindedness and morons and imbeciles and shit. It's not just a game, y'all. This shit ain't a fucking game. The Immigration Act of 1910 gave the cabinet the power to deny entry to prohibited classes of individuals and also strengthened the government's power to deport immigrants belonging to those same prohibited classes. It was commonly believed by early eugenicists that social or moral traits like pauperism, aka being poor, and criminality were passed from generation to generation. So keeping those individuals out of Canada was good for the country's future. Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, all right? Remember that? So Davenport was president. Okay, so before I do this, let me check out where we're at now because we're approaching about an hour. And I don't want to go too far, okay? So we're approaching Davenport. So I'm just going to roll out with it. I'm going to roll out with it, okay? I'm going to roll out with it. About an hour, okay? He founded the Eugenics Record Office at Cold Spring Harbor. Laughlin, excuse me. Laughlin became a spokesman for the programmatic side of the previous eugenics movement, lobbying for eugenic legislation to restrict immigration and sterilize defectives, educating the public on eugenic health, and disseminating eugenic ideas widely. See, the record office formerly came under the aegis of the Carnegie Institution in Washington. This is Laughlin right here, okay? And he would be the one that sets up all... This is the man, by the way, excuse me. This is the man that is setting up all those displays in these congresses that I'm getting ready to show you. Harry Hamilton Laughlin. He was superintendent in charge of the Eugenics Record Office of the Department of Genetics in the Carnegie Institute. Eugenics expert for the Committee on Immigration and Naturalization, House of Representatives from 1921 to 1931, Eugenics associate to the Municipal Court at Chicago, U.S. immigration agent to Europe for the Department of Labor, member of the Permanent Immigration Commission of the International Labor Office in the League of Nations, member of the Galton Society, president of the American Eugenics Society, editor of the Eugenical News, secretary of the Third International Congress of Eugenics in 1932. This is a major figure in eugenics, y'all. Here we go. It is his work on eugenical sterilization and immigration restriction for which he is best known. His model sterilization laws were used by many of the more than 30 states that passed sterilization laws. Germany's 1933 sterilization laws were also modeled after Laughlin's. Okay, even more important, as is evident in the Laughlin collection, Dr. Laughlin also devoted considerable time and effort developing his ideas for a common world government. Has to do with the New World Order, y'all. Here we go. Back to Elof Carlson's work. Charles Davenport and Harry Laughlin shared interest in chicken breeding. Agricultural genetics also provided the favored model for negative eugenics. Human populations, like agricultural breeds and varieties, had to be culled of their least productive members, with only the healthiest specimens used for breeding. Are you starting to realize yet that this isn't just one or two people talking about this? This is a major effort, you guys. Charles Davenport, the director of the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, approached philanthropist Miss Harriman in hopes of receiving financial support for a eugenic research institution, dreamed of gathering enormous quantities of human heredity data, recording them in a central bureau of study, and ultimately throwing light on the great strains of human protoplasm coursing through the country. Harriman decided to support Davenport's eugenic ambitions and funded the establishment of the Eugenics Record Office. Harry Laughlin served as the first superintendent of the ERO. The ERO was an influential organization and even influenced legislation such as the Immigration Restriction Act of 1924, compilation of the medical histories and creation of human pedigrees. Whew. There's a picture of it right there. The Eugenics Record Office, 1910. And this is Charles Davenport. This is the man, y'all. This is the man of the hour for American eugenics, by the way. Okay? This dude, you can call him the Hitler of American eugenics, if you want to. The Alberta Hospital for the Insane, as it was initially known, was opened in 1911. Sterilization procedures under the Sexual Sterilization Act required approval of the four-portion Eugenics Board. Oh, you must feel good going up before that board. Most patients were presented to the board by a representative of their resident institution. The Alberta Hospital at Ponoka was the main feeder institution of the Eugenics Board and presented 60% of all cases ever considered by the board in the 1930s and the 1940s. Sir Francis Galton, who coined the term eugenics, dies at the age of 88, 1911, leaving a significant amount of money to the University College of London. He helped to establish the Galton Eugenics Professorship. The first person to hold the post was Carl Pearson. The Laboratory of Eugenics was also endowed to the University of London upon Galton's death. Until his death, Galton remained a researcher of heredity and eugenics. He maintained several positions of authority in eugenic associations and journals in his later years, such as Biometrics. Okay? So, as I showed you earlier, now, the mathematization of biometrics. Now, so this movement, you guys, I'm showing you that they wouldn't just let this movement just go away like that. They're not just letting go. There's a lot of sanctity and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that they have put into this mission, you guys. Now, New Jersey passes their legislature, okay, including idiots, imbeciles, morons, epileptics, racists, okay? Introduced by Representative B.H. White, the aim of the legislation was to allow for the legal sterilization of undesirable persons. Here goes Iowa passing their nonsense. If the patients were thought to be of procreating children with a tendency to disease, crime, insanity, feeble-mindedness, idiocy, imbecility, sexual perversion, who were convicted of a crime, then sterilization operations could be approved. Now, on to this Kallikak family. And then what we're going to do is, we're going to start with Daddy Longlegs on part 3. But we're going to end it right here with this. The Kallikak family. American psychologist Henry Herbert Goddard published his book, The Kallikak Family, A Study in Heredity. The book was highly influential in the eugenics movement and used provocative photographs to further its theses. Goddard has been criticized for altering pictures in his study to give members of the Kallikak family menacing and sinister dispositions. You see? More pseudoscience bullshit that try to back up what they're doing. At every turn, it's crap. It's total shit. Just like evolution. All right? Now that concludes part 2 of this eugenics. What we're going to do is we're going to kick right off with this daddy long legs. Okay? That's where they start putting the propaganda directly to young women. So that's how we're going to start part 3. And then after that, we'll get into the Congress. Okay? Thank you guys. See you in the next part.